Hi, welcome to the EHR usability tutorials. Today we're going to be talking about user testing, how to conduct the actual test, and where and how do you report out the results. When it comes to EHR usability testing in the modern world, it's no longer as easy as you bring people into the lab or you head out to the clinical environments. There may be a combination of these types of testing. It may occur in the lab, it may occur in clinical spaces, but it may also occur remotely, and all of those combinations. It could be remote testing in a lab environment, it could be remote testing in a clinical environment. What you need to keep in mind when it comes to testing conditions are that you want to keep the conditions as comparable across participants as possible, meaning you don't want to test one person in their busy work office and one person in your quiet lab. That you want to capture all of the assumptions you're making about that setting. So for example, if you are capturing in a clinical setting, are you trying to capture the types of interruptions that are happening in addition to the use of the system? Are you trying to capture the function of the computer system that they typically engage in versus, say, your high-speed design desktop, those kinds of things? It all needs to be well thought out. Additionally, when you test in the lab, you have to consider the time and effort to get to the lab as part of your overall participant burden. When you're testing in clinical environments, you need to think again about the technology that's going to be available to you or not available to you. And when you're testing remotely, you need to make sure that when you're looking at things like time, effectiveness measures, how much of that can be created by running both whatever EHR system you're using, whatever data capture system you're using, as well as the internet speed itself, so that if you're coming down to the millisecond, you know how much of that is actually reflected in artifacts created from your testing conditions. As we mentioned before, you do want to typically capture some sort of subjective impression, and often the system usability scale, or the SUS, is the means. This is a standardized scale with questions, as you see, about people's thoughts and feelings about a system, and it's typically reported on a Likert scale, from strongly agreeing to statements to strongly disagreeing with statements. As you sum these across individuals, it gives you a better impression of how well your system is favored. When it comes to analysis, at least for EHR certification as part of Safety Enhanced Design, typical measures were task success or failure, time on task, and path deviations. As we mentioned before, time on task and task success, as well as path deviations, are all things that have to be operationalized within your study. Task success could include things like recovery from error, but reaching an optimal or optimized or predetermined goal. And you need to know beforehand whether or not task success is with or without intervention, with or without error. What exactly is a successful trial? The same is true for time on task. To measure the time on task, you have to have standardized set beginning and end points, so that there's consistency across individuals as to where you begin a task and where you end a task, so that everything is captured appropriately, and this can all be reported out. Path deviations are another example where you may have a predefined optimal path, and that predefined optimal path would include things like knowledge of whether or not this is the only path to complete a task, whether or not there's a secondary task that involves shortcuts, which is considered a secondary path. Is there the fastest path? What exactly are you claiming to be the optimal path, and how are you measuring deviations? There's a lot of different ways to do these. There's no set standard for how it should be done. It is something that you would have to decide on and design into your study. When it comes to reporting things out for Safety Enhanced Design, everything was thrown into the Common Industry Format Report, or a CIF. This is some examples from the NIST report for 7742, which is how a CIF report is actually created for EHR certification. Here is a data table specifically related to user testing results, where you see the tasks are outlined down the left of the screen, and the measures of success, or the metrics, are measured across the top, including the total number of participants, task success, path deviations, task time including the mean and the deviations observed, total number of errors, and task rating for each of those components. And that's just a little bit about how user testing might be assessed and reported out.